Welcome back, everyone, to our Week 2 webinar for the Introduction to Site Administration course. My name is Susie Chan, and I am in the Adoption and Education team at Open LMS based in Australia. I'd also like to mention Jaslyn Hughes, who's on the call, and Jaslyn is the manager of the Australian Adoption and Education team. Last week, we focused on the site administration settings, including users and courses. And just to point out, if you missed last week's webinar, the recording is saved here in the webinars recording playlist. This week, we will cover 2 topics: adding functionality through appearance using themes and blocks, and activities and resources. Jumping into our demo site, the site theme controls the look and feel of your site. In the Appearance tab in Site Administration, you can see what the themes are available on your site under Themes. Theme Selector is where you go to select your theme. This site is using the Boost theme, and other themes available are Classic, Fordson, Lambda, and Snap. You can also set different theme for a desktop versus a mobile device. Historically, this was really important to get the best experience on a mobile device. However, these days, all themes are now built to be responsive across all devices. So it's not an issue anymore, and that is why we just have the one theme selected here. If I want to edit the theme the site is using, we just click on the name of the theme, which is Boost in this instance. This will allow me to add theme presets, background images, and logos. And in advanced settings, there is also the option to add CSS. CSS can be great for tailoring the look and feel of your site, although it can also require a lot of maintenance, especially when it comes time to upgrade and ensuring all of the CSS changes carry across and still look right. This is best managed by someone with in-depth CSS knowledge. But if you do need assistance, our professional services team can do a brand match service if you don't have any CSS expertise available in-house. Moving on to blocks. Blocks are a great way to edit the appearance and functionality of a site. You can add blocks that appear just on a course or just on the dashboard, or they can show on every page across the site. Common ways of using blocks are through adding images, text, and links. For example, you could advertise sponsors and upcoming events throughout the site, or a completion block can be added so students can see their activities and course progress. On this site home, the blocks we are using are the calendar, configurable reports, and course categories. Now let's add a new block by going to the cog to turn editing on. Actually, it looks like editing is already turned on. Add a block, it appears here on the left. You can see there's many different blocks available. I'm going to show you the HTML block on this occasion. Scroll down, click on the cog and configure to edit the block. With this HTML block, I'm going to add content promoting the APAC, Adoption and Education webinars and training. So I've added some text here. I'm going to jump to this tab to copy over the link. Link it from here. Because it's an external site, I will open it in a new window. And I might just scroll down and grab my headshot, put that in the block as well. Oh, further down, you can select where this block appears. So either on the front page or alternate pages, and we can also have it displayed on every page. Default weight controls the order of the block in which it appears, and we'll save that. Scroll down, you can see the block now appears on the site home. And if I jump into one of our courses, you can see that the block has appeared here as well. So definitely take a look at the lesson in the course content this week, which goes into more of the most popular blocks and how they can be used. Next, let's look at activities and resources, which is where a lot of the course content creation is done. So we've already got editing turned on. So if we scroll down and find the add an activity or resource label, we refer to this menu as the activity chooser. See, there are many different activities and resources we can use. We're not going to go through all of them today as we'll be here all week, but I will demonstrate a couple of the most common ones. If you want to use the star tab, we just click on the star of the activity. And then in the star tab, that activity now appears. So that's super handy for activities and resources we use all the time. So we're going to start by setting up a label. This is similar to the HTML block, as it allows you to add text, images, videos, URL links, and you can also upload H5P content from here too. Again, as an example, I'm going to add content promoting the APAC, Adoption and Education, webinars and training. So link it. Going to select this pre-selected link, have it open in a new window, and copy over my image again. Once we've added all the content, there's a bunch of other settings, and these are generally quite similar across all resources and activities. Common module settings defines whether you want it to show on the course page, have it hidden from students until it's ready to be seen, or to be available but not listed on the course page. In this make available but not shown on page option, it becomes like an orphan, and you need to remember to provide learners a direct link to the resource or activity. Restrict access means that you can specify some criteria that must be satisfied before users can view the resource or activity. This could be based on a date, or maybe the learners need to have completed another activity prior to this. You can even restrict it to particular groups or based on a profile field. For example, activity completion allows us to select an activity the learner needs to complete before accessing the activity. So you can choose from the list of activities here. Then in activity completion, this is what tells Moodle a student has done what they need to do for it to be considered complete. For a label, we can give learners the option to mark the resource or activity complete, or tell Moodle it should be complete on a particular date. With other resources and activities, you'll find some additional options like students being required to view it or receive a grade, which I'll demonstrate in the next activity we create shortly. There's an option to add tags, which can be a really great way to link bits of content together, not just in a course, but across an entire site. Lastly, you can specify what happens with competencies if the resource or activity links to a course competency, whether it provides evidence towards the competency or maybe it completes the competency. Save that. And we can see that content now appears in our course. Now, let's look at a more complex activity, the quiz. Again, we're in our course, editing is still turned on. We click and add activity or resource. And we can select quiz, which has been starred for us. From here, we can give the quiz a name and a description, and we can choose whether that description appears on the course page. Just give it a demo quiz. Under timing, this is where we can specify when the quiz will open and close, and there's also the option to set a time limit for a quiz. If you do set a time or date expiry, you can tell Moodle what to do when their time expires, depending on how strict you want it to be. The first option will automatically submit their answers even if they have not finished. The second option will allow them to submit after the time limit, but they cannot answer more questions. And then the third option will not submit answers if the quiz is not submitted before the time limit. In the grade section, we can specify if the activity should sit within a particular grade category. This will make a bit more sense when we look at the grade categories in more detail next week. We can set a minimum grade to pass the quiz. Just make that 10. We can also set the number of attempts allowed. If there are more than one or unlimited attempts, we can decide if we want the highest grade to be counted, the average, or first or last attempt. Layout is where we can decide how many questions to display on each page. This can be really important if you have a lot of questions with a lot of text and images, as it can make the page load really slowly. This can be a challenge and frustration for learners if they're doing a timed exam. A good rule of thumb is no more than 3 to 5 questions on one page. With navigation method, you can also specify whether you want learners to be able to switch between questions or they have to do them sequentially. Under question behavior, we have the option of shuffle within questions. This is only applicable to question types such as multiple choice, and you can shuffle the potential answers for those questions. We can decide how we want students to receive feedback. Commonly with tests, this would be deferred feedback. So the learners save their answers, and once all are submitted, only then can they see if it's correct. Another common one is interactive with multiple tries, where if a learner gets a question wrong, they get feedback straight away and can attempt the question again. CBM stands for certainty-based marking, which gives the learners the option to indicate how confident they are that the answer they have given is correct before submitting. Then each attempt builds on the last option means that if there are multiple attempts allowed, the quiz will retain the answers from the previous attempt and allow the learner to update them. The review attempt options control what the students can see at any point in the quiz process, whether it's during the attempt, immediately after, or later while the quiz is still open, and then once the quiz has closed. Depending on what question behavior you have set, for example, deferred, will depend on whether you can change the options under the during heading. Generally, we tend to leave these as the default settings and just make sure the right answer is not visible to students until after the quiz has closed. Appearance controls whether or not you want learners to see the profile picture in the quiz. This just helps confirm, yes, I'm doing the quiz as me and not someone else who might have logged in on the same computer. You can also set how many decimal points there should be in grades, and in particular question grades. For example, a question could be worth 10 points and have 3 answers, and if they only get one of the answers correct, they will be awarded 3.33 points. You can also choose whether or not to display blocks during a quiz. Depending on what information the block is displaying, it could be distracting for the student, so you can hide the blocks. Next is the Safe Exam Browser. We don't go into this too much, but it essentially allows teachers to use Moodle to conduct exams and prevent users from being able to Google the answers. You can also add extra restrictions to quizzes, like require a password to be used or restrict an IP address. For example, if you want everyone to be on campus for the quiz, you might restrict it to the campus IP address. You can also specify if there should be a wait time between first, second, or even subsequent attempts of the quiz. Browser security can be set, and you can allow or not allow an offline attempt via mobile. Overall feedback allows you to put some generalized feedback based on a particular grade for the quiz. So perhaps those who received between 80 to 100%, you might say, great job. And those between 60 to 80%, it might be good work, but could use some improvement, or maybe refer back to relevant parts of the course content. Okay, we're almost there. Then, like we saw when we created the label, we have the common module settings, restrict access, activity completion, tags, and competencies. Just to highlight with activity completion, because this is an activity that can be graded, we now have the option to mark the activity as complete once the student completes it and receives a passing grade. Now we click Save and Display. And we're taken to this pretty blank looking page, but here we edit quiz, and this is where we can start to add questions. Before we add questions, I just want to point out a couple of things. The maximum grade is something we can override here. By default, it's 100, but we can change that number to what we want, maybe based on how many questions there are and how many points we want to allocate per question. The total points is where we see the calculation from the questions we've added. So if we add one question and it's worth 5 marks, then that is clearly under the maximum grade. So we'd need to either change the marks allocated to the question or change the maximum grade. Hence why we'll leave setting the maximum grade to the end. The shuffle option just means that anytime a learner goes to the quiz, the questions will shuffle and display in a different order. To add a question, we select Add, and we get a few different options. Add a new question, add from a question bank, and we can also add a random question. If we add a question from the question bank, we choose which question bank to add it from, whether it's the course level, category, or system level. Keep in mind, though, that if you draw a question from another category or the system level, If someone goes and edits the question, that change will flow through to your instance of the quiz question here. The random question is a similar scenario where you can select where the question is drawn from, only you don't select the question. Moodle will just randomly add a question for you. Let's add a new question from scratch. Here we can see a list of question types on the left, and if you want to know what each question does, just select the radio button and a description will appear. For our example, we're going to add a multiple choice question. So firstly, we need to specify which category or question bank the question will live in. Will it be specific to this quiz, to the course or category, or the whole system? We'll just select the quiz for now. We give the question a name, and this is our internal identifier as the question. So we'll just go with Q1 for question 1. Then we add the question text, which is what the learner will see. I'm going to add this pop culture question. We then need to give it default points. We'll just leave it as 10 here. We also have the option to add some general feedback if we want to, an optional ID number as another way of identifying the question, though usually we can just leave this blank. Next, we specify whether there's only one correct answer or whether there are more options that are correct. On this occasion, there's just the one. Shuffle choices. We can shuffle choices for each learner attempt. Just a note for multiple choice, it's quite common to have an answer option, all of the above, which would be listed last. So you would not shuffle choices in this situation. We can number or letter the choices or go with no numbering. We can show standard instructions, for example, select a single answer. And then we move on to adding the choices. So let's say this first option is correct. So then we would make the grade 100%. And we'll add some more options. Tulips, roses. Interestingly, with this, we can't assign 0%. We leave it blank, so it effectively means that it is 0 and has no points awarded. Or we could deduct a percentage for an incorrect answer, minus. If you have more than 5 choices further down, you can add blanks for 3 more choices. In combined feedback, if we didn't want to put in specific feedback for each choice, we could just leave it with the defaults or have something generic here. Multiple tries isn't always applicable, only when something like adaptive is used. You can add a penalty or loss of marks for each incorrect answer the learner submits, but there is also the option to add hints. And lastly, we can also add tags to the quiz. Once we're done, there we save and are taken back to the questions page. So here's our question that we've just created. And you can see now that the total points don't match as they're 10 and 100. So now I can go and change that to 10. So the learner is actually able to achieve the maximum grade. Okay, let's preview the quiz. We'll click on the quiz name up here. Attempt the quiz. This is what the question looks like for the learner. Select the right answer there. Finish attempt, submit. And there you go. Okay, that's a summary of the quiz, which, yeah, was a lot of information. Hopefully it all makes sense. Quiz does seem simple, but there are a lot of different settings. Have a go at setting a quiz up, and you can let us know in the raise your hand forum if you have any questions. The last thing I want to show you today was how to update the activity chooser preferences and recommendations. So if we go back into site administration, into courses, activity chooser settings, and this is where we can select what tabs we want our content creators to have access to. And then in recommended activities, we can choose which ones appear on that tab. So if there's ones that are commonly used or you want to promote the use of, say URL, for example, you can check that box. And then if we go back into the course and go to add an activity or resource, we can now see that URL appears in the recommended tabs. Okay, everything we have touched on today is covered in the course content in even more detail, so you can go it through at your own pace. But now I'll open it up for any questions. Feel free to ask a question in the chat box if you prefer.
I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Lucy, I can hear you.
Okay. We had tried that restriction where they had to complete something before something else would pop up, but we had we were getting errors. But this was probably about 1.5 years ago. Do you know if you're running into any problems with that on the newer versions?
No, not that I've seen in our support tickets or heard of. Jazz, have you seen anything?
No, I can't say that I have. Lucy, are you a client of OpenLMS?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, what I'd suggest is if you come across that again, if you can send us the link to the activity and we can have a look at that for you. I mean, there are a lot of things that can happen in Moodle. It can get angry sometimes when we do too many conditions and things like that. So yeah, if you do come across it, feel free to submit a support ticket and we can help you out.
Okay, I'll let our course designers know. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I've got one question. I'm trying to add an activity in. So I've got my lessons and then I want to add an activity, but it's just an activity that I've been using feedback. So just want to know if that's the best option. So it's not graded. It's just for students to go off and do some research and then just come back and put their comments in. So we can see that they've actually done it, can comment, but it's not to be graded. So would feedback be the best activity for that one?
Yeah, otherwise, would database also be an option?
Yeah, I think it depends whether or not you want that information to be shared. So feedback is a great way to, just check in with the students and see how they're going and things like that, and just, make sure that they're doing the research that they need to do. If it's something that you want to be more of a collaborative sharing experience, the database is great for that. So it can just kind of keep all of the information, categorize it and things like that for you. If you want more of a discussion, then maybe something like the forums might work as well.
That leads to another question that I'm not sure is really related to this or not, but the way, so just I'm with the Student Experience Network, so
Yeah.
I'm taking over from Sharon. So we do the platform for us, and then we copy it for each of the universities to roll out. Is there a way of having some sort of like announcements or forum where they're all connected and can come back to me somehow? Because they're
You
all
mean across, like, if you have 5 universities with 5 separate courses,
Yeah.
collating all of that?
Yeah.
No. So courses don't really talk to each other.
Yeah.
They're kind of like individual bits of information, I suppose. Yeah, so it's challenging to kind of get all of that to come back to you. There is potentially an option that we could explore with the forum, like with the announcements forums and RSS and that sort of stuff, and maybe try and get you an RSS feed that brings together all of that information. Do you maybe want to send us an email and just sort of give us a bit of an overview of what you're trying to achieve there, and we can try and see if we can put together a solution for you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Did Sharon, did she share my email address with you at all?
Yeah, I have. Well, yeah, through Paul. So Paul has given me all of that. So yeah, I've just
Excellent.
I've just spent the last 2 weeks trying to get my head around it all, and I think I'm getting there. So yeah,
Great.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Good to hear. Oh, any other comments? All right. Well, thanks for joining today's webinar. Next week is our final week in the course, and we'll take a look at the gradebook as well as some reporting options that can help track student progress and other troubleshooting tips. Just a reminder, if you have any questions throughout the week, please feel free to post in the Raise Your Hand forum. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye.
Thank you.